Hello, sweet friends, and welcome to the Rebookery channel. This is Gina, and today I'm going to be working in my new junk planner. I don't know if I've showed this to you guys or not. I know I've showed it on Instagram. It's an old cookbook. I think the title is called Scrumptious, and I just altered this book. So you can look through my videos. I think I have some videos where I've showed you how I altered books. I'll see if I can find it, and I'll link it below, but basically, what I did was I kept the book in its original spine and used the original binding, and all I did was remove a lot of the pages. I probably removed 3/4 of the pages out of this book, and then I went and glued pages together to make them stronger. So this is a spin on a gratitude journal. So in my junk planner, not only do I have my months, I also have started a new section where I'm putting my daily thankfulness, what I'm grateful for that day. I started doing this back in November, and it is life-changing. But the problem is that when I did it every day, I was going through journals very quickly. I think I got 3 journals completed by the middle of January or end of January, and I just couldn't keep up with making journals. So I decided to marry the two together, and instead of just creating a separate gratitude journal, I would just have certain sections in my junk planner where I could do my daily thankfulness. So this spread right here is the one I'm finishing up. I think I got about 10 days on this one, and basically what I did was I just set it up. I put the dates in just like I would do with my gratitude journal, and every day I would just sit down and write a quick little phrase, a couple of words, maybe draw a little picture of something that I'm thankful for. So this is the end. So I finished this yesterday, Tuesday. And so I'm just kind of putting a couple of other extra little things on. I wanted to put a Valentine on because I'm very thankful for a special little Valentine that I got from a sweet, sweet student that I've made a connection with over our first names. We have the same first names. And so I wanted to also put a little bit of the packaging from some chocolates that I got for Valentine's Day. So I'm just throwing those little things on. And now what I need to do is, today is Wednesday, I need to create another spread to write my gratitude in. And so I need to find a new page. I'm just kind of flipping through. In my junk planner, this is just where I do a lot of the doodling, that I sit in front of the TV and kind of just doodle and I don't know, just play around with no intent other than just kind of giving my brain a rest. So I'm trying to find the right page. Now I have a page that I just had been practicing. I'm really trying to practice my drawing skills. My art teacher at school, he's been helping me a lot. And so this is just a page where I'd just been practicing drawing some flowers. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this page. But here's how I'm going to make the background. I had a bunch of ink pads that were like dried up, and they were falling off of the little packaging that they were in. And so I didn't want to throw them away. I thought there's a use I could find them for. So what I'm doing is I'm taking these ink pads and I'm just smushing them onto a plastic baggie. Now some of them were pretty dry, so I'm going to have to add some water here in just a second. There's a little cup of water over to the right here where I'm dipping a few of them in the water to try to get them reactivated. So all of these inks, these are not permanent inks. All of these inks are water-based inks, and so they're going to work like a watercolor, and just as soon as I get them near water, they're just going to reactivate and get juicy again. So I'm just kind of putting a bunch of splotches and stuff, adding a little bit of water. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of smush this all over the pages, those empty pages. Now, the empty pages in that journal that I'm going to work on, they do not have any gesso on them. The 2 pages I'm going to work on are not gessoed. I have fallen in love with clear gesso. It is life-changing, my friends, life-changing. I'm using the Liquitex brand. It's the only brand I've used, so I can't compare it to anything else. I love it, but it's got a real grit to it, and I love that grit, and I love journaling over that. So one of the things I've figured out that I like to do is put like a watercolor or a water-based background, like on the back, like on the paper, just so that it soaks into the paper, and then put my clear gesso over top of that. So that's exactly what I'm doing. So I'm just taking this ink and smushing it around, using this plastic baggie to kind of get it in the little, the gutter of the book there, and just not really, I don't have any design here other than I just want some splashes of color. And so once I have that on, I'm going to then dry it with my little dryer, my little hand dryer that I have, and just try to get most of the juiciness off of that page. And so hopefully I can cut that out. I hope I cut that out so you don't have to watch me drying that. Nothing like watching paint dry. So after I do that, yeah, I did cut it out. After I do that, then I just take some of that clear gesso, and I'm just going to put it straight on the page. And I use one of my big brushes and just smush this around. Now, the thing about using a water-based ink or paint like watercolor or the chalk markers as your bottom layer, you have to be very careful with whatever you put over top of it, because you'll reactivate it. So these inks seemed to soak into the paper pretty well, and because I dried them, they didn't smush around too much. So while I let my gesso dry, I have gotten into hand stitching. I am obsessed with hand stitching. So this is my little hand stitching box that I made here. I love this box. Like, I've had this box for a really long time, but I never really could figure out what I wanted to do with it. It is truly rusted out. Like, the bottom is rusted out. So I have tried to repair it as much as possible. My husband has been telling me to throw it in the trash for the longest time, and I'm like, no, I can't. I painted it that turquoise color, but I put a lot of lacquer and stuff on it to try to preserve the bottom, because it is rusting out, and try to keep it from flaking off. So I've turned it into my sewing box, and let me tell you about this box. I am obsessed with it because here's what happens. I would never do any kind of stitching, even sewing a button, because it was such a pain in the patootie. I had to go and find my needles, and then I had to find my thread, and then I had to find my buttons. What I did was I took all of my sewing stuff, everything that I needed, not for machine sewing, but just for my hand sewing, and I put it all in that box. Now, whenever I want to sew, or if I need to sew, like I need to sew a button on a shirt, everything is in that box. And I'm telling you that is another game changer. That has totally made hand stitching accessible, and now it's not a chore. It's actually fun to open up that box, and I made all these little compartments, and I labeled everything, and oh, it's so fun. And I got rid of a bunch of stuff I didn't need, and I only have the stuff on there that I want, or the stuff in there that I want and that I'll use, and I love it. And now I've been doing a lot of hand stitching on my journals. So for this, I found just a little piece of fabric. I think this is a vintage sheet, and I like to, if I'm stitching onto paper, I like to just glue my fabric on the paper just with a glue stick. And the reason why is because it kind of holds it in place, kind of like you would use pins when you're sewing fabric to fabric. This is like using pins. A trick I saw on somebody's YouTube channel, I believe, is taking just a push pin, especially when you're using paper, taking a push pin and pre-punching your holes. That makes it really easy, and you'll see here in a little bit, I do not pre-punch some of the holes, and I rip my paper. So using that little push pin, I keep that in my sewing box. That is great for sewing on paper because my holes are already pre-made, and all I have to do is just put the needle through the holes. So I stamped on that piece of fabric, and I just stamped, and I used some Stays-On ink, so it's like permanent ink, and I just stamped on there, I think it says thanks for, and so that's just going to be like my title for this gratitude page. Now I'm kind of looking for some little doodad or something to sew on that fabric because it looks a little bare. And so I'm just kind of looking through one of my little tins that I have in my sewing box, and I just have some old things, just like snaps and buttons and fabric bits and trims. I'm just trying to find something that'll work. And so this is a little piece of packaging from some vintage snaps, and I just kind of like the color. And so I will stick that little thing on there, and it just adds a little bit of interest. Now my stitching skills are so basic. I'm actually going to do a little bit of a blanket stitch on this piece right here. And actually a blanket stitch is one of the stitches that I can actually do pretty well. This is a really messy one. So just want to go ahead and tell you, I know the obvious. I am not a professional hand stitcher. And so my stitches are very messy and they're very loose, and I probably don't do it the correct way, and I am okay with that. Remember, this is not about getting approval from others when you work in your journal. This is about you getting approval from yourself. You do what you want. And if you want to make up some crazy stitches for your sewing, go for it. If you want to come up with some new crazy way to make a background by using dried up ink pads, go for it. It's all about what makes you happy and what helps you tell your story. So as I kind of just meander through these stitches, I decide I want to, on that back side, maybe put a little button. So I have a huge button collection, like beyond belief button collection. But what I did to make this so much easier is that I just took a handful of buttons and I put those in my sewing box, and I said, these are the ones I'm going to use. Now, when I go through that supply, I'll go back to my big supply of buttons and I'll put those, I'll just keep replenishing. But what I found is when I had my buttons all in one place, this huge stash that I couldn't even think about, I would get so overwhelmed anytime I'd go get a button. And it would take me like 20 minutes to find one stupid button. When I take this little kit that I have, and I just have 3 little compartments that have buttons in it, it makes my choice very easy. And I actually pick something and I move on. And that's the whole point. So I'm just going to stick this little button on here and then tie a really, really sloppy knot after I finish stitching. And I decided to go ahead and stitch the rest of the edge of this page. Now here is where I had a little problem, because I did not pre-punch my holes and I ended up and I ripped my paper. No worries. I took some of that tape. I think it's like strand tape. It's got like fibers in it. And I just put it on the page, and then I'm stitching through that. And I really like the stitching through that because it's really sturdy and it's going to hold my stitch in place. And then I'm even going to tie a knot right there, so it'll hold it in place. So the tape actually works out really, really well. Okay, to set this up, now that I've added that little piece with my title, now to set this up, I'm just going to take some washi tape and I'm just going to put it in places where I think I might have like my days. So I'm just going to try to get as many on these pages as possible. I don't care if I get 9 or if I get 7. It doesn't bother me. I'm just kind of haphazardly putting these things on here. If I put a lot on there, I won't have very much space to journal or to draw. If I put fewer on there, I'll have more room. And so this is totally up to you, whatever you want. Over Christmas, I purchased a new date stamp. I had a date stamp a long time ago, and then it ran out because, the years went past what it was on the date stamp, and I just never got a new one. I finally got a new one. And oh my gosh, I love it. I love it so much. And so now I'm just going to go through and I'm going to stamp the dates on the pieces of tape. And once I do that, one thing I've noticed is that if I stamp on my paper, then to get the excess ink off, I just stamp on whatever paper I have underneath. I think I've got some tissue paper underneath. I think I also have some deli paper underneath. So it's just my scrap paper and I'll just stamp right on it. And then I'm just going to take this Sharpie paint marker, and I'm just going to write the days. So like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Just because in my mind, I just think in terms of days. And so I put the days on there because that just helps me keep track of time. Dates don't mean much to me, but days do. So I just kind of put those on. And once I get that going, I think I need to actually go ahead and put Wednesday in there for today. Go ahead and put that entry in. It's the end of the day, and this would be the time I would normally do it anyway. What I'm thankful for today is the camaraderie and teamwork that I have going on at school this year. I switched rooms and I moved next to a teacher that we've always kind of been together, but because proximity-wise, our classrooms weren't next to each other, we just never really connected the way we need to. And this year we have done that. She's also got a student teacher, so it's what I call a baby teacher. And then I have a pre-student teacher. So between the four of us, we're really just kind of, we are working, it is just like a well-oiled machine. And today was just one of those days where one of us was working on assessing student work. Another one was working on coming up with some really good ways to get them engaged in the learning. And then the other two of us were working on teaching new concepts. And it was just, between the four of us, it was like we were on fire. And I don't know if the kids felt it, but I know the four of us did. And went home today and I was tired, but it was a different kind of tired. It wasn't like exhausted tired. Like yesterday I went home and I was exhausted tired. I couldn't even blink my eyes. I was so tired. But today I got home and it was like a good kind of tired. It was like I had done good work type of day. And that's amazing. And it was because we worked together. So I'm just going through some old books that I have here. This is an old Dick and Jane book. Sadly, I paid $10 for this Dick and Jane book, and it was in the condition that you see it now. Ripped pages, written all over. I probably paid too much for it, but I couldn't pass it up because the images and the words are just too good, and I knew I would be able to cut it up and put it in my journal. So the words I pulled out of the text I have was working, we work together, you and me. And I had this little image from a picture book of these two birds, and they're kind of standing in the grass eating. And I just thought that was perfect. All that excess glue, I'm going to soak it up with some glitter. So I'm sprinkling some glitter on there. And then I will run my dryer over it. And I'm going to call it good. And so I'm loving this new section in my journal, and I can't wait to fill it up with the rest of the things that I'm thankful for. Guys, I hope you got inspired today. I hope you can do something like this in your junk planner or your journal. And I hope you are healthy. I hope you are happy. And I hope you do something fun and creative. And I hope you're thankful for something awesome today. Love you guys. Bye.